I think my little hotel stay in Louisville, Texas, may have that beat from this year. Just your typical Saturday morning Alabama weather, hot, muggy, sun blaring already. Yeah, I'm sure. Hopefully so. Nice. Good deal. Quite a bit.
Canadian Tire Motorsports Park supposed to be the final race of the regular season?
If I'm not mistaken, I think Gateway was supposed to be, and then when they made the schedule changes.
Kind of what I thought, too.
Yeah.
But, okay. Not only that, but the competitors were racing Mother Nature as well. Turns out Mother Nature ultimately won that, forced NASCAR to call the race with 11 laps left on the board. When NASCAR called it, knowing they still had the Xfinity Series race to get in, it was Austin Hill who ends up with the win. Hill building up more than a 1-second lead over John Hunter Nemechek when the field had been called down to pit road due to rain. Hill over Nemechek, then Sheldon Creed third, Todd Gilliland, Parker Kligerman, Zane Smith, Tyler Ankrum, Paul Menard, Sam Mayer, and Carson Hocevar. Sam Mayer was driving the Brett Holmes racing truck and actually did pretty well with it. I'll let you kind of fill in on that one, Matt.
Yeah, he due to owner's points, he had to start shotgun on the field, like I said, due to owner's points. But he was able to charge up from 40th to 2nd in the first stage. And then, typical Watkins Glen handling issues came into play. And then he hung around the mid-top 10 most of the race. But he had a really, really, really super strong truck. And then, if that lightning and rain delay hadn't have happened, he probably could have got a solid top 5 very, very easy.
I believe so, yeah, I think you're right. Either way, it's Hill's second win of the year, so no new winners on the year. 10-driver playoff field is now set. John Hunter Nemechek is your 1 seed. Hill is your 2 seed. Ben Rhodes, Todd Gilliland, Sheldon Creed are all in on wins. The drivers that make it in on points are Zane Smith, Matt Crafton, Carson Hocevar, Chandler Smith, and Stuart Friesen. Tyler Ankrum and the popular young rookie Derek Kraus missed out on having the points just enough to get in. So Mother Nature decided she had interfered enough, and that brings us to the Xfinity Series race. And the winning driver really only can think to himself, what if I committed to the series full-time this year? Because the winner is 18-year-old Ty Gibbs. We've been talking about him since the beginning of the year, the grandson of Joe Gibbs. And he had a car, which, hey, it's a Joe Gibbs racing car in the Xfinity Series. It just flat-out worked. Ended up leading a race-high 43 of the 82 laps run. He got his 3rd series win this year, all of them coming this year, and all in only 10 starts. And when this kid does become full-time, which could be as soon as next year,
right?
This is going to be something we're going to have to watch for.
There's no ifs, ands, buts, or questions about that. He's going to be a serious threat when he does go full-time.
Now, I will say this. I'm a little surprised they haven't announced him already.
I think it's coming.
Yeah, it's a matter of, I would say days, not weeks. Meantime, on top of that, Gibbs beat out one of the best in NASCAR on road courses. That was A.J. Allmendinger, doing it by almost a second. Gained that gap after passing the road course master with only 2 laps left. Trailing them, Austin Cindric, Justin Allgaier, Harrison Burton, Brandon Jones, Noah Gragson, Jeb Burton, Justin Haley, and, there's that guy again. There's Sam Mayer. This time he was running the number 8 for Junior Motorsports, so it was a busy day for Sam, but, hey, all around a good day, so it's no doubt that Sam and Brett have created a really good partnership there.
They have. They definitely have.
All right, now, since Ty Gibbs isn't playoff eligible, here's the situation. Austin Cindric continues to be your 1 seed with 4 wins, 2 wins each for Allmendinger and Allgaier. Jeb Burton, Myatt Snyder have a win each, so they're locked into the 12-driver playoff field. The drivers that are in on points at this time are Harrison Burton, Justin Haley, Noah Gragson, Brandon Jones, Jeremy Clements, Riley Herbst. Herbst not comfortable in his position. He's got a rather tenuous 15-point lead over Brandon Brown with the 12th and final playoff slot. Thing about it is, while we already have the Camping World Truck Series playoff series set, 6 races to go before we get to the playoffs and the cutoff in Xfinity.
Yeah.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, there's plenty of time for Brandon Brown to get in for sure, but, Riley Herbst's seat is, I would call it semi-soft, but not quite soft.
Yeah, I gotcha. So we've got him penciled in, but we have by no means put him in ink.
Yeah.
And I'm nowhere near grabbing a Sharpie. How's that?
Yep, absolutely.
Wife is complaining about gas prices, which I understand now that I've seen it. Again, for those of you that are just now joining us, Karen and I are on the road. We're heading up to Indianapolis to check out the racing this weekend up there. And we're in Kentucky right now, and we're stopping at a place where gas is $2.99. So be prepared. Just letting you know. Sundays, it's better than Franklin, Tennessee. Just north of there, we saw one place that had gas for $3.29 a gallon. So don't get gas in Franklin, Tennessee. Okay? Fair warning. Sunday's racing action began with NASCAR's Cup Series. They ran at Watkins Glen as well. Current road course king Chase Elliott having problems before the start. Failed pre-race inspection multiple times, and we all know what that means by now. That causes the ejection of his crew chief, Alan Gustafson, and he also had to give up his top 10 qualifying slot, moved to the back of the field. Thing about it is, something like that, I guess it just motivated Chase. I mean, is that the read that you had on it, Matt?
It was that and then some.
Because keep this in mind. I mean, he is already the 3rd winningest road course driver in history.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of the race, he was breathing down the neck of the leader, Hendrick Motorsports teammate Kyle Larson. Larson also had to deal with lap traffic in the final laps, but Larson negotiated him perfectly. Give him credit for that. He held off Elliott. He gets the win. It's his 5th win of 2021. Elliott ends up 2nd, trailing by more than 2 seconds at the end. Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Christopher Bell, Kevin Harvick, Chase Briscoe, and Tyler Reddick make up the top 10. Larson's now your 1 seed with 5 wins. 3 wins for Martin Truex Jr. and Alex Bowman, 2 wins each for Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott as their regular season is winding down. And then, whole lot of drivers already locked into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
These drivers are in with 1 win each. William Byron, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch, Christopher Bell, Michael McDowell, and Eric Almirola. Again, 13 of 16 slots spoken for with only 3 races left before the playoffs begin in the Cup Series.
Mm-hmm.
Those that are in on points right now, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, and then there's Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick has a very slim 15-point lead over his own teammate Austin Dillon for that 16th and final playoff slot. But again, we got 3 races left, and we've been asking all year long, is there the possibility of us getting 16 different winners? So mathematically it's possible.
Yeah.
And if we get another Eric Almirola or Michael McDowell situation, we're starting to talk about not just Tyler Reddick on the hot seat, but Kevin Harvick and even the guy who's trying and in a really good position. He's tied right now with Kyle Larson for the regular season points title. Denny Hamlin could all be on the hot seat, and wouldn't that be strange?
It would be strange for sure. I personally believe Hamlin is more than safe. I don't think you're going to see 3 different winners in 3 races. There's going to be
it, but there is that possibility.
Oh, it's always
get past this weekend.
Right, it's always a possibility for sure. But I could see 1 because we all know the chess match that Daytona is here in 3 weeks. But
Absolutely.
with Michigan and this weekend in Indianapolis, I think we're going to see a repeat winner. It's just a question of who.
Yeah, for me, is it Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson?
I could, being a new course in the Indianapolis road course, I'm not going to roll somebody out that's You know, you got AJ Allmendinger in the field this weekend. You got, Chase Briscoe, who ran last year and won the road course race for the Xfinity Series. It's not out of the question to have an extra new winner this weekend, but I don't see it happening.
Well, here's the thing. That my dark horse choice is the guy that you just mentioned, the guy that ran and won on the road course here last year in the Xfinity Series. And I get it. It's a totally different year, and we haven't seen as much out of Stewart House Racing as we'd like, despite Eric Almirola's win. But we've seen we've seen a little bit, at least more consistency out of the 4 and the 14 cars, being Kevin Harvick and Chase Briscoe. It wouldn't shock me if Chase Briscoe ends up in victory lane.
Oh, no. Neither would I.
And then at that point in time, this whole thing between Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon almost becomes a moot point.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to watch and see how that actually turns out.
Yep.
And then we'll wrap up last weekend's review with Music City. We're going to spend a while on this because we'll get back into this in the news portion. Music City, IndyCar's first race in a month, first ever Music City Grand Prix, downtown Nashville. Congratulations to the city and the surrounding area because more than 100,000 people were in attendance for this. They're going to be back.
Yep.
Now, the question is whether what Mark Miles, the CEO, said that he thinks that this is a race that could begin to rival Monaco. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's try and rival Long Beach first, okay?
Right, yeah.
Anyway, race had a hard time getting rolling because somewhat due to rather the tight street course they laid out, running from Nissan Stadium across the Korean Veterans Memorial Bridge and back, several caution periods, even a red flag period, had the race getting to the point of, well, we had to wonder whether it was going to be dark before the checkered flag flew. One thing was certain, we knew Colton Herta had a rocket.
Mm-hmm.
But when the laps wound down through varying pit stop strategy, it was actually Marcus Ericsson out front. This was a big shock. We'll get back to that in the news. He was trying to hold off Herta. Herta had pitted some 7 laps after the last one for Ericsson, so that meant that the former F1 racer was defending for everything he was worth. The chaser, Herta, said that he just kind of lost his mind somewhere down there, and he overdrove turn 9 and nosed into the wall, so with 5 laps to go, his day was done. They bring out a red flag, causing a shootout to the end. Marcus Ericsson using a low downforce strategy, which over the bridge, long straightaways, made a whole lot of sense, and it worked. He was able to hold off his teammate, which is 6-time IndyCar champion Scott Dixon, to get that win. James Hinchcliffe ends up 3rd. Ryan Hunter-Reay and Graham Rahal make up your top 5. 6 through 10 featuring Ed Jones, who made a great run from his horrible qualifying position at the back of the field. Alex Palou, Felix Rosenquist, Helio Castroneves, and your hometown racer Joseph Newgarden rounding out the top 10. Alex Palou leading the points at this time, 410 to 368 over Scott Dixon. Don't think it's over, not by a long stretch.
Nope.
Pato Award has 362, Joseph Newgarden 335, and Marcus Ericsson with his win jumps up into 5th with 331 points. That's really the race right there with only a handful of races left to go.
Mm-hmm.
The rookie race is all but over. Scott McLaughlin leads Romain Grosjean 206 to 166. That being said, Grosjean is running the remainder of the season, so he's got an outside chance at it. Jimmy Johnson does not. He's got a sad 61. Since we got the time, let's talk about this weekend's scheduling. This weekend's scheduling begins actually in just a few minutes. About 15 minutes from now, give or take, Formula E gets their weekend and, quite frankly, their racing season underway and about done. Because this is the last weekend for Formula E racing this year. The first race of the season-ending Berlin E-Prix doubleheader weekend airs on the CBS Sports Network, starts at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, 7:30 a.m. Central Time. So like I said, in about 15 minutes from right now. Then here in the United States at a race that I'm getting to take in person shortly, the Big Machine Spiked Coolers Grand Prix. It's on the road course at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. For those of you watching on television, this is a 14-turn, 2.439-mile-long road course. You'll get it on the NBC Sports Network and the IndyCar Radio Network, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. Following that, on the same track, NASCAR's Xfinity Series got the Pennzoil 150 at the Brickyard. NBC Sports Network and IndyCar Radio Network, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central Time, or after IndyCar, whichever happens first. Sunday begins with the season finale of Formula E. This will be on the Berlin E-Prix Road Course. Again, CBS Sports Network. 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central Time. Both races on this Tempelhof Road Course at the Old City Airport in Berlin. I didn't tell you about it in the first race. It's a 10-turn, 1.24-mile-long course, and ultimately that will crown their season champion. Oh, by the way, we're still not done. The busy weekend will continue with the Cup Series, running on the very same road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as Indycar and Xfinity do later today. That has created a bit of controversy, which we'll get into later on in the news later in the show. Officially known as the Verizon 200 at the Brickyard, NBC and the IndyCar Radio Network have your coverage, 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central Time. And the final event of this weekend is the NHRA's Menards Nationals, presented by Pet Armor, Heartland Raceway in Topeka, Kansas. Finals airing Sunday afternoon beginning 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time, plus you'll get the televised action all on Fox. Formula One's the only series that is in season that is off this weekend. That's how busy this weekend is, and the only reason Formula One's probably not in action is because they have to take in pretty much the entire month of August off, which ever since we started covering Formula One, Matt,
Yeah.
I got to admit, I really haven't understood that.
Neither have I. But, you know, even though NASCAR and IndyCar had their 2-week break off, it wasn't mandatory, and everybody else got to work to where the F1 break, everybody is shut down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I don't know. It's a European thing. I can't explain it any better than that.
Of course.
Anyway, so we got a slightly early start to the show, and we appreciate everybody joining us here this morning. So we've done our recap. I'm going to turn things back over to you guys in the studio here as we get ready to go to a quick break. But we do, of course, have a word from a great sponsor. And when we come back, we'll kind of look back here at Nashville because we mentioned it at the outset.
Right.
Over 100,000 people showed up, and the television numbers were amongst the best that NBC Sports and, quite frankly, IndyCar have seen in quite a while.
Yep.
Plus, we want to tell you about Marcus Ericsson because we mentioned it. It was amazing that through pit stop strategy and everything that Marcus Ericsson was able to do what he was able to do and get out front, much less win. We'll tell you why it was so amazing. And then another quick tease later on in the show, mentioned it a moment ago, this will be the first time for the Cup Series running the road course at Indy. Not all the Cup Series drivers are real happy about that. We'll get into full details on that coming up a little bit later. We're just underway right here on the Championship Racing Network.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network.
This report is service of the Area Agency on Aging. Many older Alabamians have to choose between buying food, medicine, or other necessities. If you or someone you know struggles to pay for groceries, help may be available. Call the Area Agency on Aging at 1-800-AGE-LINE to find out more.
If you're having problems buying your groceries and you need help, call the Alabama Area Agency on Aging locally at 1-800-243-5463. They'll explain all about SNAP to you. It's a food stamp program for senior citizens.
WVTM 13 is back on Dish. Subscribers, thanks for your patience and welcome back. Welcome back to primetime favorites like The Voice, The Blacklist, and Little Big Shots. Welcome back to the best in daytime with Days of Our Lives, Steve Harvey, and Ellen. Welcome back to today's WVTM 13 news, the latest word in what's happening right now and what's next, plus the all-new storm tracking power of WVTM 13 Live Doppler. Thanks, Dish subscribers, and welcome back to WVTM 13.
Napa know-how.
At Napa, get a $10 gift card when you buy a 5-quart jug of Mobil 1 motor oil for $27.99. A deal so rich, they'll call you an oil tycoon. Yep, with great oil for $27.99 and $10 back. All you'll need is a monocle. Quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
At participating locations does not include state, local taxes, or recycling fees. Advertised sales price may not be available in some states. Rebate restrictions apply. Offer ends 8/31/21.
Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. Why let those dishes pile up? Dawn Dish Spray cleans them super fast. Just spray, wipe and rinse. Baby's taking a nap. Clean those bottles in a snap. Just spray, wipe and rinse. Dawn Dish Spray, it's a spray for your dishes. Smoothie mess in a blender. Clean it easy, clean it fast. Just spray, wipe and rinse. Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. How's it work again? Just spray, wipe and rinse.
4 tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Back from break, and now we're going into the news section talking about this just a little bit sizable event we had in Nashville last week.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like how you did that. Quick overview, one particular part of this race. We noted in the recap that Marcus Ericsson won the race. Again, his second win of the year. He claimed his first win earlier this year, kind of in a minor upset up in Detroit. But while he did get the win, he had to overcome a couple of major obstacles to do it, and I use that term pointedly.
Yeah.
The first was a badly executed hurdle attempt over Sebastian Bourdais. The race was set to go back to green after the first caution, and Ericsson apparently thought that Bourdais was going to get on the gas quick, so he jumps on the go pedal himself in anticipation, but he beat Bourdais to it rather significantly.
Yeah.
And in the process, jumped over the backside of the number 14 racer. Bourdais knocked out of the race. Meantime, Ericsson's crunched his own front wing in the process. If you watch the replay,
yeah,
you can tell it is under one of the front wheels. So he's limping this car around the course, steering it with one tire.
Mm-hmm. He was.
But he is able to come to the attention of his pit crew. And remarkably, I got to give credit to the Dallara chassis manufacturers, because these are the guys that build the chassis for all IndyCar racers.
Mm-hmm.
If this had been a Formula One car that had done this, that car would have fallen apart upon landing.
I think it would be that and then some.
The only thing that Marcus Ericsson's car needed, after almost a full lap of riding around, steering with only one tire, and landing after hurdling another car, was a replacement front wing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It sure was.
That is to the ultimate credit of the Dallara chassis manufacturers.
Oh.
I mean, that's amazing. I would have figured that car would have been done.
Yeah, it was unreal to me. And whoever, if hopefully they may be listening, we always have wishful thinking, but whoever the social media manager is for the IndyCar series needs a raise, and whoever prints out the spotter's guide for the race for this weekend needs a raise as well. Because on the spotter's guide, and somebody shared it on social media with Marcus Ericsson's car, we got all the other cars are sitting parallel. Marcus Ericsson's car is nose up,
and should have been.
And yeah, it was a pretty big hit with everybody that looked at it.
Absolutely,
it's crazy.
So anyway, replacing the front wing, it's a bolt-off and bolt-on process for those guys, and through excellent pit strategy and the rest of the cautions throughout the race, Ericsson was able to get out front. He gets the win. So, again, amazing job by the pit crew and amazing job by Dallara. Then there's television. NBC and Nielsen, the television ratings company, revealed the ratings for last Sunday's race. For the NBC Sports Network, the hype worked because they've been promoting this now. Well, they were promoting it all throughout the Olympics. Not that that's saying much, because I think this Olympics, one of the least watched Olympics in my lifetime.
Yeah, it was definitely not very watched for sure. I know I didn't watch it.
Yeah, but either way, they did hype it. They hyped it a lot, and it worked because this race drew in the biggest ratings for an IndyCar race on cable, not just NBC Sports Network, which, remind you, has not been around for all that terribly long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about for IndyCar races on cable, period, in 23 years.
Yep.
Got to go all the way back to 1998, back when ESPN had the television rights to get ratings this big. The numbers show that the total audience delivery was some 1.212 million people tuned in for this race. That blasts the average that the NBC Sports Network has had for race coverage from 2020, last full year. They averaged 432,000 viewers in 2020, and that number was an increase over 2019's numbers as well. This shows a pretty good trend. So far this season, granted, the average picked up by 1.212 million people watching. Cable network on the NBC Sports Network IndyCar coverage is averaging now 761,000 people per race. That number's bound to come down. I don't think 1.212 million people are going to be watching all of the races throughout the course of the rest of this year, but we do have a couple of big ones, and that does include Long Beach coming up. And we've got this weekend at Indianapolis, which is always a big ratings grabber as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what the final numbers turn out to be.
Absolutely.
And here's the sad thing. Remember, NBC's killing the NBC Sports Network at the end of this year.
That's the big thing.
We said this at the beginning of the year before even these numbers started to come out. This is a bad move.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more than a bad move for sure. But
thank you.
You know, the quality, I'll say this, even though it's through streaming and it's behind a paywall, Peacock does do really good work. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, at some point in time, I may think about it, but that's not happening anytime soon for me.
Which
I'm just saying.
You have access to get into mine anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I understand. This weekend at Indianapolis, get ready for this. Rahal Letterman Lanigan is fielding a third car. Now, this third car was originally planned for somebody else. We'll get back to that. But it's going to end up being driven by a Formula 2 driver by the name of Kristen Lundgaard. He hails from Denmark. With that kind of a name, that's not a shock. 20-year-old's been running in the Formula 1 ladder since 2017. He's claimed 2 titles in his first season in Formula 4, plus he was running a couple of other series, one being the SMP division, the other the Spanish championship. So the next year he moves up to Formula 3. That's 2018. 2019, he ran Formula 3 again while also getting a couple of Formula 2 starts. Formula 2 officially moves into in 2020. He gets 2 wins and 6 podium finishes while finishing 7th in the points. This year, not as good. He is 12th in points this year so far with 2 podiums but no wins. But they think highly enough of him over at Alpine that he's part of their driver's academy, so he'll be somebody to watch. I don't think that he's going to be an IndyCar driver full-time. I think he wants to be F1 full-time. But, hey, we've talked about the difficulty of getting a seat in Formula 1, so he's keeping his options open.
Yeah, and he's not off to a shabby start at all because he put that third Rahal Letterman Lanigan car in position 4 for the start of today's race. Only 3/100ths of a second off of the pole.
Oh, that ought to let everybody know that he's here to play.
Oh, yeah, and, you know, this talking about being here to play, there have been other Formula 1 drivers spotted in the garage area and the paddock area this weekend alone. One of them being the backup reserve driver for none other than Red Bull, Alex Albon.
There you go.
And there's been articles already shared this morning to where people have talked with Alex Albon, and he is thoroughly impressed with the level of pressure in the IndyCar garage because it's such less pressure. And his words, quote, "Politics do not run rampant in IndyCar."
And that just put Formula 1 on warning. Huh.
Pretty much.
Not a bad thing.
Pretty much.
Okay. Well, and then we mentioned this on last week's show in regards to the entry list for the Music City Grand Prix. Last week's was the biggest non-Indy 500 race in 10 years when it came to the number of cars that started. 27 started last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it took all of 1 week to break that record. 28 entries dot the entry list for today's race. In addition to the regular full-time drivers, we've got the part-timer. He's not full-time again until next year. Elio Castroneves is back. We mentioned Lundgaard just a moment ago. Cody Ware is back, for what that's worth. R.C. Anderson is back with the Top Gun Racing entry that did not qualify for the Indy 500, so, you know, take that for what it's worth. So what do we get? The record for most cars to start an IndyCar race other than an Indy 500 in modern history. Back in 2011, that was when 29 cars started the Kentucky Speedway race, 2011. We got 28 this weekend. I will say in 2011, later that same year, 34 cars started the Las Vegas Motor Speedway race, but that race is a race that should stick out in your memory, not for the number of cars that started, but for how it ended. It was red flagged with 12 laps left for a massive wreck that saw Dan Weldon get killed. The wreck began with Weldon's teammate Wade Cunningham getting into James Hinchcliffe. Hinchcliffe bounced off J.R. Hildebrand. That started a chain reaction that ultimately collected 9 other cars before Weldon even came up on the scene. He ended up being airborne and getting into the catch fence. And I know that this is early, but we do want to mention this because this is how important that safety has become in all of the racing world, not just IndyCar, but in all of the racing world.
Right.
When he got up and into the catch fence, this car barrel rolled along the fence line, cockpit first. Replays of the crash showing that Weldon's helmet struck one of the catch fence poles hard. That's what determined to have actually killed him. Afterward, officials learned that Weldon had been killed. They said that the rest of the race was going to be canceled. IndyCar has yet to return to Las Vegas, and for those of you that are wondering if they ever will, I seriously doubt it.
Yeah, definitely one of those don't hold your breath moments, for sure.
Heavy news week in IndyCar. Buckle in. We got a ways to go. We may be in the IndyCar for the rest of this hour. I'll just be real honest with you. We start off with what used to be Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports. They expanded that title sponsorship with Arrow, and then the Formula One team, McLaren, decided they wanted in on IndyCar too. So this team into 2021 becomes Arrow McLaren Racing SP. You found this bit of news last Sunday morning, just before the race time, Matt, so I'm going to let you break it.
Yeah, before the race last week, Arrow McLaren broke the news that they are purchasing that 75% ownership into the team. And on top of that, Zach Brown promised that Arrow McLaren SP in 2022 potentially could be early. Potentially as early as 2022 could be a 3-car team, but certainly by the 2023 season for sure. Excuse me. But those drivers that are locked in for 2022 for sure are Felix Rosenquist in his ironclad deal with Pato O'Ward in the championship hunt for 2021, and he's not going anywhere either. As for that third driver, Brown did not give any names, but he said they have a very short list of candidates, and if they feel that a driver could be a threat to win in their first year with a team, that third car will come in 2022. Otherwise, they will take their time and make sure they get a competitive driver who fits the style and fits with the team.
And remember something here, silly season in Formula One is not as, well, it never sees as much movement necessarily as, say, NASCAR or even IndyCar. But it's nowhere near over by any stretch of the imagination. Don't count out another Formula One driver coming over and potentially becoming that third driver.
Right, for sure. You know, considering that they've been being spotted on the paddock area at IMS this weekend already. You know, it's not out of the question, but we've got a little bit of a breaking news from Indianapolis just spotted.
Okay.
Last week, there was an engine-related penalty for Alex Palou in Nashville, and he lost 6 spots on his starting position in the grid. Well, today, Joseph Newgarden has a 6-spot grid penalty as well due to an engine change.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Things to watch for.
Absolutely.
All right, we talked about Cody Ware being in this race, and, well, I don't know about you, but I'm not expecting a whole lot out of it. But this is part of that Dale Coyne Racing partnership that's been good for Rick Ware Racing in their first year. Rick Ware got talking about it. We talked about him last week. He wants to insure 2 competitive cars in NASCAR. Well, he's just now starting his involvement in IndyCar, and as the co-entrants for 2 cars, one the full-time ride driven by Romain Grosjean, the second one part-time basis by Pietro Fittipaldi. It has been a good year. There's no doubt about that. He got into an interview with Racer.com where said earlier this week, quote, "We're negotiating to become even more involved. We're very entrenched in working with Dale, have had a great relationship with him. We're working hard right now to put together a multiple-year scenario to have a presence to grow our team even more." And the fact that he has partnered with Dale Coyne, I think, is a bigger part of this than Rick Ware will ever really want to admit to.
Yeah, that is insane for sure, no doubt. But, you know, with one competitive car and one other non-competitive car, just an example on the starting lineup, Romain Grosjean starting P3 today at a 110.74. Cody Ware starting 27th, 113.75.
And remember, there are 28 cars starting this.
That is insane. Absolutely insane.
Yikes. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea there. I want to take an early break here. So I'm going to put John on notice here as we get ready for talking about our great sponsor, Michael Hart, Knox Foundation Solutions. But when we come back, it was a sad week, especially on the media side. And you, Matt, you actually had a bit to say about this as well in the latest blog that appears on the CRN radio.us website, which we try to link to, but we're going to go ahead and let you know. Go ahead and go there. There is a blog spot or a blog link right there that you can click on, and you can see Matt and my thoughts and all the ones from the past as well that John did a very great job of setting up. But we lost quite frankly, one of the best voices in a long time when it comes to motorsports. We've known a lot of names. We've heard a lot of names, and a lot of them will stick in your mind. The Ken Squires of the world, for example. And when when these guys pass away, we have to notice it. Bob Jenkins is one of those guys, and we lost him this past week. So we're going to do a retrospective on his life coming up. But right now, I'll turn it back over to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Steve. And, he was talking about Ox Foundations. And what is Ox Foundations, Matt?
If you got any kind of home problems with your foundation, wall separating, foundation leaks.
Water in your basement.
Yep.
Cracks in your basement's walls. Your doors stick if you try to open them. It just not right. Uneven flooring. A multitude of things.
Right.
This could be a sign that your foundation is in need of repair. And if it is, it's better that you get it done sooner rather than later. Later is going to cost you a boatload more money to get it fixed.
Right.
How do you know if you have a problem? Yes, that's a question to you, Matt.
It's a big question. You've got to have a problem. I'm not considering I'm working on getting my own house built right now.
I have an easy solution for you.
What is that?
Ox Foundations.
Yep.
Give Mike a call. Very good friend of ours from the show. Michael Hart. He will come out to your house. Mm-hmm. He will go over it thoroughly. He will check everything there is to check. And if you have a problem, he'll let you know in writing for free. Mm-hmm. Hey, this is what's going on. This is what you need to get fixed.
Right.
If you don't have a problem, he'll say, hey, you don't have a problem. Nothing to worry about. Shake hands, go on your merry way. Everybody's happy.
Mm-hmm.
All free.
Absolutely all free.
Not a dime out of your pocket.
Right.
If there is a problem, and you do need work, Ox Foundations can help you out. And the reason we suggest these guys is not only are they professional, they do good work.
Absolutely.
They are not the most expensive company to work with. And if you mentioned promo code WEST, W-E-S-T, tell them you heard about it on CRN, mention the promo code WEST, not only do you get professional help for your house, you get 15%. 15% off of your total bill.
Yep.
Give Michael a call. 205-362-6419. That's 205-362-6419. You can also contact him online, Mike@oxfoundations.com. Mike@oxfoundations.com. Tell him you heard about it here on CRN. He'll take really good care of you. Again, it costs you nothing for him to come out and look at your house.
Yep.
Not a thing.
There's been quite a few Ox Foundations vehicles I have seen in the Calhoun County area here lately.
In fact, we've had people that have called Mike, and Mike's gone out, and he said, hey, there's nothing wrong.
Yep.
And they told us, he came out and said, yeah, we're good, so we're happy.
Yep.
It didn't cost us a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does cost you, you get 15% off just by saying, hey, West.
Absolutely.
So check him out. 205-362-6419 for Ox Foundations. You can't go wrong.
That's right. Call Mike.
Tell him you heard about it right here on CRN.
Yep.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network.
Have you been thinking about buying a camper? Well, you need to come to Campers Unlimited on Highway 77.
All right, so yeah, we have no Steve on the radio.
That's crazy.
We have Steve on the board, we have Steve on our computer, we have Steve in our headphones. No Steve on the radio.
How's he not going to the radio if he's coming to the board there? That's
It's the
crazy.
board.
That's
experience in the central Alabama area in the RV business. They have a beautiful big
So, you know what?
with 14 service bays.
I don't care what Steve has to do, what hoops he has to jump through. As far as I'm concerned, this last week I'm coming into this place.
Over 130 travel trailers and fifth wheels to choose from.
This is
No
ridiculous.
pressure, no
I mean,
It is hard to be able to try to tell it that down.
The
You can't tell it.
RV resort.
I'm not. I'm always going to get back.
Lake loaded with fish.
I won't come back.
With a kiddie spoon,
I'm
clubhouse,
done.
Wi-Fi, and cable.
I've
Check
got
it all out.
too much other problems to worry about than having to figure out what's wrong with this damn board.
In Galveston.
Because you know he's not going to fix it.
With the Capital One Saver Card, you earn unlimited 4% cash back on dining out.
Head hurts.
4% back on entertainment. Or on popular streaming. And now, 3% back at grocery stores. So
My blood pressure's so freaking through the roof, dude.
earn
I had your camera
back from going out.
going good.
With the Capital One
Yeah, I saw it. I seen it drop.
in your wallet.
It was going good. And then nothing. And then that one started. And I didn't do anything different. I didn't disconnect it. Nothing. It's just really fucking frustrating. Here we go.
Limitations apply. 2 tires only. And back out to the track for more action.
As we said there going into the break, this past week we lost an
Absolutely, arguably the most iconic voice in motorsports media in all of my years. And
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
And that's when Bob Jenkins.
When I think about some of the names that kind of got me into the racing world, and I don't mean any disrespect to the guys from the Motor Racing Network, because really my first exposure to NASCAR, like a lot of people, 1979, Daytona 500, CBS Network, Ken Squire. And then here comes ESPN, and they are really, really looking for all kinds of sports to cover. And one of the major sports that they landed upon that they could get relatively cheaply was NASCAR. And they brought in a guy at the very beginning by the name of Bob Jenkins. And that was where you not only started to hear him calling races, but he was doing a show for them that actually went into the background and you got some racing news. And for a lot of people, Bob Jenkins was that guy, and we lost him this past week.
Yeah.
So it seems kind of appropriate, considering that for the last couple of years he's been so involved with Indianapolis Motor Speedway that we head to Indianapolis on the very week that we unfortunately did lose him. He'd been trying to fight off cancer. He was first diagnosed with colon cancer back in the 1980s, but battled back from that, continued his television career until 2012. He retired from that aspect of broadcasting to care for his wife, Pam. Pam had been battling cancer herself. She passed away that October. In February of this year, Jenkins had told everybody that he had been determined to have had 2 malignant tumors behind his right temple after he had told doctors about severe headaches over the Christmas holiday. And that, unfortunately, is what took his life. Born in Richmond, Indiana, raised in nearby Liberty, Bob Jenkins graduated high school in 1965. He went on to Indiana University, graduating there in 1969, majoring in broadcasting, he said, hoping to become a DJ due to his love of music. But his first radio job was actually as a news reporter, and that's where he met and became friends with a gentleman by the name of Paul Page. Paul Page should be a name that should be interesting and memorable to a lot of people who know IndyCar racing, right, Matt?
Absolutely. He, he was one, like you said, he's one of the first ESPN anchors to go to the All Sports cable channel in 1979, and he stayed until the 2003 season. But for me, Bob Jenkins is more iconic with Indianapolis than anything, like you said, the place where you're going today. And when you think, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, outside of the late Tom Carnegie, the voice that you hear, the next person that is right there, not right below him, but it's Tom Carnegie's heels to Bob Jenkins' toes. he's right there step for step with Tom Carnegie being one of the most iconic voices in motorsports altogether.
I could agree with that. But Bob Jenkins, I mean, from radio to television, you mentioned it, one of ESPN's first anchors when that channel signed on in 1979. He stayed there till 2003. He went to various tracks around the country in remote studios, either in Indy or Charlotte, and very rarely showed up in Bristol at ESPN's headquarters. But this is how versatile he was. He was primarily the lead announcer for ESPN's NASCAR coverage, but he also called kart races back when there was the kart IRL split, IMSA races, and Formula One races in the 1980s and 90s. Also working with the IMS radio network, he started there in 1990, went through 1998 when he joined the television coverage, the famed Indy 500 for ABC solely beginning in 1999. Of course, ESPN lost NASCAR to Fox and NBC in 2001. So Jenkins concentrated for a couple of years, as we mentioned, until 2003 on ESPN and ABC's IRL broadcasts, again, splitting coverage. Paul Page was covering the kart races during that split. But Jenkins wasn't retained after 2003, so he joined the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as their primary track announcer, what Matt and I do at Talladega Superspeedway, for example. But he kept up his television career by going over to the Speed Channel, which is now Fox Sports 1.
Mm-hmm.
He moved over to Versus in 2009 when they obtained IndyCar television rights as their chief announcer, and then stayed with them when that became NBC Sports as they bought that network, turned it into the set-to-die NBC Sports Network. But he retired from there in 2012, as we mentioned earlier, to care for his wife, Pam. He did make occasional appearances on television, but mainly struck to his work to the track. His final major appearance was inducting the late Dan Weldon into the Indianapolis Museum's Hall of Fame in 2019. And I want to go back real quick because this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When I got into radio, I learned of a book called Top 40 Hits. Top 40 Hits is a book, or a series of books, I should say, that is done and published by a gentleman by the name of Joel Whitburn. Joel Whitburn is considered to have the largest collection of records in the world, if not the largest, because he went through the process of buying either in album form or mostly in single form. Kids, ask your grandparents about singles. Of every song that ever hit the top 40.
Right.
Think about that. Top 40 hits go all the way back to the mid-1950s, the beginning of the rock and roll era.
Yep.
And he has created, through the help of Billboard magazine, a compilation and published it in book form of every single artist and every single song that has ever made the top 40, no matter whether it just brushed it and came in at 40 for 1 week, or went all the way to number one and stayed there for a dozen or more weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to Bob Jenkins and his love of music. He collected records too, and according to reports, during his lifetime, amassed a collection, again, 45 RPM singles. Remember, kids, ask your grandparents about these. He amassed a collection of some 10,000 45 singles.
That is wild.
Bob Jenkins passed away Monday due to brain cancer at 73 years old. He's going to be missed. I got to admit, I knew he was there for the Indy 500. I was hoping he was going to be here for this weekend. And I'm sure if he were alive, he would have done literally everything he could to have been there this weekend, at least for the Indycar race, if not for the entire weekend.
Right.
And I would have loved to have heard his voice one more time coming over those speakers.
That would.
But unfortunately, I'm going to miss that. But I am very interested to hear and see how the track memorializes him, because they're going to.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're going to do it with the ultimate in love and caring.
Absolutely. And you can definitely say and argue he's got two pretty solid voices that are covering as lead PA announcers this weekend to memorialize him and fill that role. One being Alan Bestwick, the other flanking him is Jamie Little.
Yeah, you couldn't have done much better.
You can't do much better.
I mean, in some ways, and I think that this is that's part of the ultimate tribute that the track is doing to Bob Jenkins for all of his work there and his history there. they said, hey, not just one person can fill in for him. We're going to get two.
Right.
And to get names like Alan Bestwick and Jamie Little, who are broadcast veterans for, well, decades. I mean, I'm not trying to put them down and, call them out as far as being old. I am. But, they've been around for a long time. They're veterans. They are very, very good at their craft. They know what they're doing. And I think it says a lot of the respect of Indianapolis Motor Speedway to make the decision to pull two people down instead of just one.
Right.
Because again,
Absolutely.
I mean, this is one of those names. I mean, it's we talked about some of the big names in the broadcasting world. I mean, think about what Talladega Superspeedway alone has done for Barney Hall from the Motor Racing Network after he passed away. They dedicated the MRN booth back in the old tower and again in the new tower to his memory. It's the Barney Hall broadcast booth for the Motor Racing Network.
Right.
Easily this becomes the Bob Jenkins PA booth at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Oh, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. None at all. None at all.
Again, they're just, there are iconic voices, and I don't even know how many times I've talked about this. There are iconic voices within the broadcasting world that when they're gone, you know it. You think Keith Jackson, you automatically think college football. And it's weird that college football doesn't have another Keith Jackson.
Right.
On the radio side, we could easily talk about the guys that called both Alabama and Auburn games over the years. Jim Fife and, John Forney and all those guys, the classic ones. And, Eli Gold has certainly been there for a long time. Auburn has gone through a bit of turmoil when it comes to that, not of the announcers doing. But, college football's rife with them. Broadcasting in and of itself, if you just think about sports broadcasting, the Al Michaels of the world, these are names that stick out. You remember them regardless of what it was that they were doing. And Bob Jenkins was one of those guys. I mean, I said it before, I'll say it again. I remember the early days of ESPN back when it looked like they had hand-built the studio out of cardboard, and probably had, truth be told.
Yeah. He and Larry,
and here's
Larry
Bob
Newberg.
Jenkins. And he's one of the first voices ever, and I was sitting there with little Matchbox cars of a Wood Brothers number 21 and a, Darrell Waltrip Gatorade number 88, and that was my first kind of foray into NASCAR. And I said it before, I'll say it again, watching that 1979 Daytona 500. But then here comes Bob Jenkins with a NASCAR show, a racing show, really, which it concentrated largely on NASCAR, but to his credit, he didn't solely concentrate on it. He took it in different directions. Bob Jenkins was one of those guys that started to kind of begin my own love of the racing world and of the broadcasting side. That's Bob Jenkins to me. For you, Bob Jenkins is a little bit different because you actually had the chance to meet him.
I did, and I've actually, the blog entry that I wrote this week that you spoke of earlier, I've got it pulled up, and I will read it off word for word, telling the story of my encounter with Bob Jenkins. I started the blog entry off of the year was 2000. This is one story that I haven't told much. In 2000, I was fortunate enough to be chosen to speak at the Talladega Texaco Walk of Fame ceremony in downtown Talladega. That year, the inductees were Darrell Waltrip and the late Bobby Hamilton. I was elated to be invited to the pre-ceremony invitation-only reception. The entire time going up, I was nervous because I was going to get to be in a room to where I had no clue who all would be there, current stars or legends of the past. Several local people were there that my family knew. We were conversing with them most of the time. After practice had concluded at Talladega that Friday, the dignitaries, inductees, and several series figures started rolling in. The MC of the event was the late Benny Parsons. I was introduced to him first when he came. You absolutely could not imagine how nice of a gentleman he was. Throughout the reception, I had the opportunity to get photos with and speak to people with the likes of Robert Yates, Ricky Rudd, Bobby Hamilton, Darrell Waltrip, Mike Hilton, Ernie Irvin, Benny Parsons himself, Phil Parsons, Richard Childress, and many others. About 30 minutes before the reception ended, two more very, very large figures made their appearance. One of them was Dr. Jerry Punch, and the other was Bob Jenkins himself. I thought that my conversation with BP was good. Boy, was I wrong. I was introduced to them by BP himself because it impressed Benny so much that I skipped our homecoming football game that night to be at the ceremony. Bob asked me what led me to skip the game to be here. I simply told him that things like this are once in a lifetime and you don't pass up a chance for rare opportunities if you get them. Doc had that I'm impressed look on his face, but the words Bob said to me were very striking and have stayed etched in my mind until this day. Bob Jenkins uttered these words to me. I look at that as how I got my opportunity. I was a race fan that got lucky, and you are a race fan that got lucky enough to do this. The only words that I can say because it struck such a lasting impression on me so hard was, yes, sir, you're right. Our conversation lasted about another 15 minutes or so before we had to go to downtown to the park for the ceremony. To this day, my conversation with Bob has been unforgettable. He even sat by me on stage. One question I got to ask him was this: what is one thing you enjoy so much about what you do, whether it's on radio or television? His response was subtle yet humble. Because I adore getting to paint the picture and tell the story of the sport to the fan that may not be able to see the race. That conversation has had such a lasting impact on me because he was so humble and extremely nice to speak with. That night I was able to get a photo with Benny and Doc Punch themselves, but wasn't able to get one with Bob because he was such a popular figure to talk to. But the aspect that he took the time to speak to little old me just meant as much as the photo. Tuesday morning, the good Lord called Bob Jenkins home after his valiant fight with brain cancer. Arguably, he will live on as the most iconic voice in motorsports broadcasting, whether it be at his beloved home at Indianapolis Motor Speedway or in our backyard at Talladega. His voice is absolutely unmistakable. As the Florida State Seminoles stated about their late beloved coach Bobby Bowden, today we lost a legend, but you never lose a legacy. Bob's legacy will never be gone. With my current involvement in the NASCAR ranks, his response to my reasoning for being there that day means more to me now than ever. We're just race fans that got lucky. That's how I see it.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back.
WTDR-FM.
to the Championship Racing Network.
Bringing it back here at the top of the hour. Man, this show is flying by, John. It's flying by.
Absolutely.
But here at the top of the second hour, we're now going into Formula One news with not quite as much as IndyCar this week, Steve. Not quite as much as all. Are you there? Hello? Anywho.
Looks like we lost Steve for a moment.
Wow. Well, Aston Martin quickly changed the... Ooh, what was that? Anywho, well, Aston Martin quickly changed the race stewards' disqualification of their driver, Sebastian Vettel, after the Hungarian Grand Prix, meaning the elimination of his second-place finish since officials could not obtain enough fuel post-race to properly test for any illegal substance. As we noted in last week's show, Formula One rules stipulate that teams must provide 1 liter of fuel for testing after each race. However, the best Vettel's team can muster... Oh, what's going on here? But could muster was 1/3 of a liter, triggering the disqualification. Again, the team appealed the decision, but on Monday of this week, the FIA officials dismissed their right of review, saying there was not enough relevant information. There he is. Got him back.
Yeah, not enough relevant information.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this whole right of review thing is it's such an odd thing. I mean, you and I have talked about the weirdness of Formula One rules. I mean, can't you just do a straightforward, hey, we object to your calling? No, we have to do a right of review first, and then we'll figure out whether or not you have enough standing.
Right.
I mean, we're not talking about, like, going through pretrial and then grand jury. I'm not sure. But anyway, so we noted this on last week's show. Formula One rules stipulating that a team must provide a liter of fuel for testing after each race. The best the Vettel team could muster was 1/3 of a liter, triggered the disqualification. Again, the team appealed the decision. Again, Monday FIA dismisses their right of review. Aston Martin based their evidence on a faulty fuel pump. They said it meant that a, quote, significant amount of fuel was inadvertently discharged from the fuel cell, which left them only able to get that 1/3 of a liter.
Yeah.
FIA officials determined that this was indeed significant and relevant new evidence that was needed for a review of the penalty, but then ultimately determined that, quote, Aston Martin would have had to present facts that actually more than 1 liter of fuel was remaining. The explanation why this requirement could not be met is not relevant to the decision as to whether a breach of regulations has occurred. So with that, the right of review is dismissed. The disqualification stands. And based upon that determination, Aston Martin decided that, well, with very little to stand on, they withdrew their appeal. Just, at this point in time, Karen and I have been on the road for about an hour now. We've just passed a couple of distilleries here, and I'm thinking to myself, Aston Martin would love to be in this part of the country right now because they need to drown their sorrows because of this.
I could agree with that.
Again, FIA rules baffle me sometimes, and this is one of those times when it baffles me.
Well, not only that, but FIA stewards, just the FIA in general. Steward decisions, race rules, race procedures, event protocols, whatever you want to call it, it baffles me, period.
Yeah, I could agree with that. So, anyway, that's even more of it. Then there's this bit of news, and I'm waiting for him to find his next place, and I don't think it's going to take all that long, considering how long this longtime Renault/Alpine employee, who has been head of that F1 team's power unit division, leaving the company reportedly by mutual agreement. In other words, we were going to fire you, so we're going to give you the chance to say that you quit. That's what that means. Remy Tappen, who's worked for that car maker/race team for over 2 decades, has done pretty much everything that one could do leading up to his point, including race engineer for both Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso, actually helped Fernando Alonso win his 2 F1 titles back in 2005 and 2006. In 2011, he became the head of the Renault engine customer division, worked with Red Bull during the end of the V8 engine era in Formula One, but stuck with Renault when they even sold off their race team. But got to remember, they did keep supplying engines for the series, so he continued to work for Renault back then. Renault buys the team back in 2016. He becomes the engine technical director. Now he's gone by mutual agreement. And here's the thing. Renault engines, we have seen them be competitive. They're not exactly the weakest things out there.
No.
I mean, think about it. Alpine just won the last race with Esteban Ocon. You can't do that with a weak engine. I don't think it's going to be all that terribly long before this guy gets hired on by somebody else. And I'll be a little surprised if Williams doesn't bring him on. I know that they're using Mercedes engines, but I'd be a little surprised if either they didn't bring him on or Haas F1, despite the fact that they're using Ferrari engines, didn't try to utilize him in some way.
Or even outside of that, you know, when Red Bull takes on the Honda engine program when Honda leaves, I'm not going to say they're out of the question.
That's true too.
Yeah,
that's true too. They need somebody that knows how to run an engine department, and this guy certainly does know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then there's one more note on engines, and this takes us to Italy, Scuderia Ferrari. Apparently, they hadn't used all their allotted engine upgrade tokens for the year 2021 yet. Almost all the other teams had either already done their upgrades or won't, as in the case of Haas F1. Ferrari has been biding their time. They've been running a combination of older 2020 spec parts and new for 2021 spec parts. Still, it has not officially used up their one full upgrade allowed. Reports out of Italy have them prepping this upgrade to be revealed when the series is ready to run, either in their own backyard for the Italian Grand Prix or shortly after that, coming up in September. Ferrari boss Mattia Binotto said, quote, "What we did at the start of this season, we didn't complete the entire power unit, so there are still components which are the ones of last year. We're going to bring an evolution to those ones." So I think that this is going to be a significant step for us at the end of this season.
Right.
Now, Ferrari has not exactly been non-competitive. They haven't found victory lane, which, again, is a bit unusual for Ferrari. But they haven't been uncompetitive. If they can get this engine to work, and I think that's the key.
Yeah.
If they can get all these components to work, which I think is why they're waiting not just through the August break, but into September, they want to make sure that this thing is bulletproof.
Absolutely.
But if it can be that, suddenly Ferrari becomes a player again. How much of that trickles down into the Alfa Romeos and the Haas F1s?
Quite honestly, I don't know how much of it would trickle down. If any does, I'm going to say just a little bit better than 50%, because I think they're going to want to make sure that it runs perfectly fine first before they trickle it down to the Alphas and the Haas F1s and things like that.
Well, plus we already know that, Ferrari is never one to be upstaged. They don't care if they got customers or not. They're never going to be upstaged if they can help it, even by their own, especially by their own customer teams.
Mm-hmm.
So we know this. Ferrari itself has the A-spec engines. Alfa Romeo and Haas F1 are the B-spec engines.
Right.
So
absolutely.
I think you're absolutely correct in this. It's going to be a while, like next year, before Haas F1 or Alfa Romeo see any hint of this particular engine upgrade.
Right. Absolutely.
And that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to harp on this for just a moment. This goes back to those rules, and I don't know whether this is unwritten or what, but maybe there needs to be a rule that says there are no more A-spec or B-spec engines. If you're going to supply somebody else with an engine, you give them the same engines that you got.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen this before, and it hurt Joe Gibbs' feelings. But back when Furniture Row Racing and Martin Truex Jr. claimed the championship back in 2017,
right,
that was all Joe Gibbs Racing equipment under Furniture Row Racing's name.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to get up under their skin. Yep. On the other hand, I don't see Hendrick Motorsports, I don't necessarily see Richard Childress Racing with Earnhardt Childress engines complaining about whose car it is, as long as their engine's in victory lane.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like you just said, used to be the days of, Roush, when Roush had their own individual engine program before they merged up with Yates engines. Those, Hendrick, Childress, who else? Let's see. Ernie Elliott when he built Dodge engines.
Right.
Place like that. People like that, You don't hear complaints like that, like you said, and I agree with you on that.
I don't know if that rule would get past Ferrari, though.
Yeah, you're right about that for sure. You are correct.
Just don't think it will. Over to AlphaTauri, officials there high on their pair of drivers for 2021, so much that they have openly come out and said they want to keep both Pierre Gasly and 2021 rookie Yuki Tsunoda for next year. Gasly was once with Red Bull. He was traded effectively to AlphaTauri for 2019 when Red Bull pulled Alex Albon up to take that seat. Since then, Gasly has scored points on a pretty regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
As for Tsunoda, he broke onto the F1 scene in a big way, scored points in his first race, has 18 points on the season so far. That's good enough for 13th in driver's standings. He's tied with Lance Stroll, who's been in Formula One obviously much longer. All this led AlphaTauri team boss Franz Tost to say, quote, I must say he's doing a good job because you must not forget he is a rookie, and it's a pretty impressive showing for a rookie. And, you know, again, you say, well, he's only got, 13th in driver standings, 18 points so far.
Right.
I got news for you. He's blistering guys like Mick Schumacher, who, granted, if Mick Schumacher had better equipment, he might actually be doing better because it's Haas F1. But, there are much more heralded rookies out there. There are much more heralded young drivers out there. And Yuki Tsunoda's beating them.
Mm-hmm. He sure is. He sure is. He's been more impressive this year than I personally anticipated. Very much so.
Yeah, I agree. And then there's that Miami Grand Prix again.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing. Well, it looks like we've actually got things cemented here. And the 2020 season schedule for Formula One's not complete, and we may not see it until, October. Maybe we get lucky and we see it next month, September. But I'm thinking October at the earliest. But Formula One officials have confirmed, yes, there will be a Miami Grand Prix. They said that they're going to do what you and I talked about. They're going to split kind of as much as they can the two U.S.-based Grand Prix. They're going to put Miami in May of 2022, which will separate it out from the U.S. Grand Prix in Texas at Circuit of the Americas, which should probably be late October, early November, in order to avoid any conflict between those two events. Formula One CEO Stefano Domenicali said this, quote, we can confirm that the much-anticipated Miami Grand Prix will happen in the first half of May. So that even gives you a little bit more of an idea, the first half of the month of May. Demand for tickets, he said, is high, even though sales have not officially started. So it looks like they're going to do what we have kind of said that they should have. It looks like they may come to North America next year, assuming that a Canadian Grand Prix actually does happen. Assuming Canada allows them to race, they may be paired with the Canadian Grand Prix.
That would be an eye raiser for sure.
Well, no doubt. Again, that's kind of what needs to be done. I mean, they're going to make two treks to North America. And the first one, under normal circumstances, read Canada without their head in the sand.
Right.
Under normal circumstances, they come to North America the first time for exactly one race, and that's the Canadian Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go and they do Asia and they do Europe and all the others, and back to Asia, as it turns out. And then they come to North America again, or really the Western Hemisphere, and they do the United States, Mexico, Brazil, or depending on the schedule, Mexico, United States, Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to not have them travel 3 separate times to North America because, it's not cheap anyway to do what these guys do and traveling all around the world. Why are you going to make them come 3 times to North America? Settle it down to 2, put U.S. and Canada back to back. Canada and Miami are far enough apart to where I don't think you're really scalping tickets from each other.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can put Austin, Texas, and Mexico City that close together and not feel that you're scalping tickets from each other, certainly you can do the same thing for Montreal and Miami.
It makes perfect logistical sense to do that. It doesn't make logistical sense to go 3 trips, and go from Canada to, say, Baku, and then Baku to Tokyo, then Tokyo back to Miami. It doesn't make logistical sense. Put them together,
exactly.
make two North American trips, and call it good.
Yeah, so to borrow liberally from Ron White, we hope that the person who's scheduling Formula One at least owns a globe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
All right. So Formula E, for those watching the Formula E race, which, from what I understand, just ended. We'll get back to that in a moment. And listening to us at the same time, be prepared when they hit the track tomorrow, because what you saw this morning, it will be the same turns and lengths, but they're going to run it in reverse of the way that they did today, just to be able to challenge the drivers a bit more. So, yeah, what you saw today, they're going the other way tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Tag Heuer Porsche began this series back in 2019. Since then, they have had drivers Andre Lauderer, and this year they teamed him with series veteran Pascal Wehrlein, who came over to Formula E for Formula One. That happened back in 2018. While neither has claimed to win for the young team, the team likes the pair enough that they're both coming back for Tag Heuer Porsche for the 2021-2022 season. Ever since he participated in that November test for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing at Barber Motorsports Park, where he finished 12th fastest out of 21 drivers, it's been interesting to hear about Antonio Felix da Costa, because those two sides have kept in touch about possibly having him move from Formula E to IndyCar.
Yeah.
If you were hoping for that, it appears not yet. Da Costa recently talked about it and said, quote, "I will not be racing IndyCar next year, or at least if there is still something on the table, I'm 90% sure I will not be racing IndyCar next year." Unfortunately, things did not work out between us. He's talking about Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. He said mainly because of timing, to be honest. They wanted me to answer in the time where I couldn't provide an answer, and they had to move in a different direction. We don't know what that direction is. Rahal talked to motorsport.com, said he would still be interested in bringing Da Costa over to IndyCar in the future, added that was why they're moving forward with the news that we mentioned earlier on in the show last hour, putting Christian Lundgaard in the number 45 later today. Don't read that into being a full-time opportunity. Rahal said, quote, "I'm interested to see how he does." So this is more of a tryout than anything else for Christian Lundgaard.
Right.
This was something Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, I think if they could have, because they've talked about going to a third full-time car, oh gosh, what, 3 years now?
At least 3 years, if not 4.
And Antonio Felix da Costa wouldn't have been a bad selection by any means. In some ways, that's kind of a shame that they couldn't have come to terms.
I personally don't think Pascal Wehrlein would have been a bad one either. Not at all.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, there's...
looks like Pascal Wehrlein is locked in, though.
Yeah. But yeah.
All right, so let's take you over to Berlin. I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt. I'll let you take it to break by kind of going over what has happened in race number 1 of the final weekend of the season for Formula E.
Yep. The round 14 of the Berlin E-Prix, BMW Berlin E-Prix, has ended. There were 21 of the 24 cars finished on the lead lap, and going from 1 to 24, I'm going to give you this final rundown for the first race. I'm just going to read the last names because it has just E on there, and some of them I don't want to butcher the names. But your winner was Lucas Di Grassi, Edward Mortara in second, Evans in third, Nato in fourth, Dennis in fifth, Verne in sixth, Da Costa seventh, Gunther in eighth, Rast in ninth, Lauderer rounded out the top 10. With Buemi in 11th, Van Dorn in 12th, Rowland 13th, Cassidy in 14th, Friends in 15th, Ericsson in 16th, Sims was 17th, Sete Kamara was 18th, Turvey was 19th, and Lynn was 20th. As we just talked about, Wehrlein was 21st, De Vries, the first car, 1 lap down in 22nd, Blomqvist in 23rd, and Sam Bird in 24th, rounding out the final rundown of the first race of round 14 of the Berlin E-Prix on that one. And as we get ready to go to break, coming up next, we will go to the NHRA, Camping World NHRA division, and then round the show out with Cup and Xfinity news from Indianapolis, as we have a little bit more breaking news from Indianapolis on a driver change for the Xfinity Series for today.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network.
WV.
Racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Back in for break. Championship Racing Network. Producer John here. And you know, Matt, we got more news coming up. We got some NHRA news, some more IndyCar news.
Yep.
But before we get there, I want to let everybody know about Ox Foundations. Now, if you have any kind of worries about the foundations of your house, you need to give these guys a call today. Set up an appointment. Call Mike, 205-362-6419. Ox Foundations. They will come out to your house. They'll look it over. If there's nothing wrong, Mike will say, hey, you got nothing wrong, nothing to worry about. And guess how much you have to pay for that?
Not one single dime.
Nothing. Zero. Goose egg.
Yep.
So what do you have to lose? Nothing. The only thing you're sacrificing by not calling is your peace of mind. And that's worth $1 billion.
That's right.
Or more.
That's right.
You need to give them a call today. 205-362-6419. If you have cracks in your basement walls, if you have moisture on the floor of your basement, your doors are not quite opening and closing correctly, maybe you see some warps in your floors, all these could be signs of a foundation issue.
Mm-hmm.
What to do about it? Give Ox Foundations a call, or you can contact Michael via email. It's Mike at oxfoundations.com. He'll come out to your house. He'll give you a written estimate. Written. Even if there's nothing wrong, he'll still write it up and tell you, hey, there's nothing wrong.
That's right.
And if there is nothing wrong, you pay nothing. He goes on his way. You have a peace of mind that, hey, we're all good. We're at least for a couple of years anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If you do have something wrong, and you say, hey, Mike, we heard about you on CRN, and we just wanted to tell you West. That gets you 15% off anything that you need to have done to your foundation.
Mm-hmm.
You think about that. Just pick a number. $10,000 worth of damage to your foundation, it gets fixed.
Mm-hmm.
You say West, automatically knock $1,500 off.
Yep.
How cool is that?
Big time.
WEST, promo code WEST. Give Michael Hart a call today. 205-362-6419. And be sure to tell them you heard about it right here on the Championship Racing Network. Let's see what happened in NHRA, Matt.
Yep. Well, the NHRA Factory Stock Showdown continues to gain popularity among the fans and the racers as well. In fact, Don Schumacher Racing likes it so much they have added a third full-time entry into the division, with David Davies as the driver of the Dodge Challenger SRT Scat Pack. Davies has run in lesser divisions as the Modern Street Stock Hemi Showdown such as the Modern Street Hemi Showdown division, but broke into higher divisions in Norwalk earlier this year when he piloted that Challenger. This weekend, the entry becomes a regular participant, bringing him with 6 event wins and 5 runners-up. He teams with 2018 Factory Stock Showdown champ Leah Pruitt and Mark Powick, who is trying to break through but to date has a best finish of 3rd place in a division that regularly attracts 20, if not more, competitors for each event. When the NHRA...
Matt, when you and I have started talking about the NHRA, we concentrated on what was then the Mellow Yellow Drag Racing Division, now the Camping World Drag Racing Series, the 4 divisions at the top.
Yep.
Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock Motorcycle.
Right.
And then we heard about this samtech.edu back then, Factory Stock Showdown.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this sounds fascinating. And I looked into it a little bit more because it was attracting big-name drivers like Leah Pruitt. And then we find out that, granted, none of the 3 of us have the checkbook to be able to do this, but how you can go down to your local Chevy, Ford, or Dodge dealership,
right,
and you can buy one of these cars.
My checkbook can do that.
I mentioned this on the show, or I mentioned this to you, I don't remember whether it was last week or the week before, but I'm on an email list for Chevrolet, and I just, what the heck, I like to keep up with some of these things, and every once in a while they go ahead and throw out something that I find interesting, and they threw out, would you like to order a Factory Stock Showdown eligible Kobo Camaro? I'm like, okay, I got to find out about this. They're only going to make a limited number of these.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw the order form. They're going to do this in 3 runs. Least powerful to most powerful, if you can imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
The most powerful Copo Camaro, eligible to run in the factory stock showdown division, is yours for the low, low price of $130,000.
My paycheck could easily do that.
Yeah. My wife just said she's got it covered. You can get a mid-run, or you can get the lowest price one, which is about $105,000. These aren't cheap. But again, remember what we're talking about. This very car that you will watch run in the factory stock showdown division is a car that you, if you have enough money, can buy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what attracted us to this particular division.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, when the NHRA returns to Charlotte to run their second event of the year, second countdown to the championship event to let you know when, the race is going to be known as the DeWalt Carolina Nationals. The toolmaker signed on as the title sponsor. DeWalt is well known in the motorsports world. We've seen them in NASCAR for a long time as a sponsor, most notably probably for Matt Kenseth, but others as well. Recently they signed on, and this, I think, will go a long way towards breaking them into not necessarily so much Formula One. I would see IndyCar beforehand, because if you remember what we talked about in IndyCar news, McLaren just recently came to the agreement to buy a 75% or controlling interest in Aero McLaren Racing SP, but DeWalt has signed on as the official tool and storage partner for the McLaren F1 efforts. I think that opens up a door for DeWalt. Again, I don't think necessarily in Formula One. That might be a little too expensive for them. I can easily see them doing some stuff in IndyCar, though.
I would agree with that. I mean, you know, like I pointed out to you when I went to Mid-Ohio a few weeks ago, actually last month, not a few weeks ago, Honda had a full-blown F1 car up there that was Max Verstappen's. And I was looking at some of the logos on there, and of all sponsorship logos I've seen on there, I saw Walmart on the Red Bull car.
That out to me. I remember that.
So, you know, to the level that Walmart is, and in the tool world, DeWalt is just as big on that same level. I wouldn't put it out of the question, but it wouldn't be anytime soon.
Yeah, I think so. You know, if they're going to be involved with McLaren, with as much as McLaren is beginning to do in other series, and them expressing their interest in being involved with more and more series,
right,
I think this does open that door for DeWalt to be coming right along for that ride.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
All right. So that brings us to NASCAR's Cup Series. By the way, welcome to Louisville, home of the Big Bat, which we can't see from the interstate, just to let you know.
And
but we're
the
about
United
to stop for a toll. Yikes.
And the United Parcel
Apparently,
Service.
to get from Kentucky into Indiana, you not only have to cross a bridge, you have to pay a toll to do it.
And the home of the beloved United Parcel Service Company, better known as UPS.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for all of their hard work. Last year, we talked about this a lot because this was the first time, and truth be told, it took Roger Penske to do it because for whatever reason, the leadership previously of IndyCar never seemed to really have that much interest in working with NASCAR. I guess they saw them as more of a direct competitor. I'll be real honest with you. I see a lot of crossover between NASCAR and IndyCar. I see and hear of people who have a lot of interest, you know, and they may be primarily into one or the other, but they find themselves interested in the one that they're not primarily interested. So if you're a big NASCAR fan, you have some interest in IndyCar.
Right.
Things like that. Ohio. Crossing the Ohio River, my wife just asked. But anyway, they find that they're interested in both. I don't really think that they're that big of competitors, to be real honest with you, so it surprised me that it took this long for them to work it out. But again, it took Roger Penske to do it, to do the NASCAR-IndyCar doubleheader. IndyCar in the Xfinity Series running on the road course on Saturday last year, and then the track got reconfigured. The Cup Series ran the Brickyard 400 on the rectangle that we're so familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it changes this year, this weekend. Cup Series not going to see the track reconfigured for IndyCar weekend, as NASCAR's Cup Series will run on the road course as well. This is part of NASCAR trying to, I guess, re-drum up interest. Because if you go back to the 2008 Brickyard race. Mm-hmm. We remember this well, don't we, Matt?
Oh, yeah.
NASCAR was throwing a competition yellow about every 10 laps because Goodyear brought a tire that degraded so badly, it, I think, practically powdered up on the track.
Yeah.
It ended up becoming so dangerous that attendance afterward, I think this just ticked off fans, truth be told, attendance at the track and the television ratings have taken a notable drop really ever since then. So again, we think it's NASCAR trying to build that interest into NASCAR at Indianapolis and working with the track's new owner, again, Roger Penske, who has said undoubtedly he wants NASCAR at Indianapolis. They decided they were going to ditch the rectangle for the road course, but not all the drivers are happy about this decision, and we're talking some pretty big names. Mm-hmm. Get ready for some of these quotes. Lead off with Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin said, quote, "We lost a crown jewel. I don't love it. I don't love the move." You pretty much can't state that there's any there's any room for argument here.
Right.
You know exactly what he's saying.
Yep.
And you and I kind of talked about this as well. I mean, Indianapolis is Indianapolis, and there are quotes that kind of deal with that as well. Mm-hmm. But this isn't what we traditionally think of when we think Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Bingo. You're exactly right. Exactly. I mean, automatically, you know, like you said, when you think Indianapolis, you automatically have the image of that rectangular 4 individual corner racetrack with the 2 short chutes. You have that. You don't have the envision of a 14-turn road course.
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. Austin Dillon said much the same thing as Denny Hamlin, quote, "I think we lost a crown jewel when we don't go to the Oval. This history of it, I don't think the road course will ever be what the Oval history has." Now, Daniel Suarez was a little more diplomatic. He said this, quote, "I love Indianapolis no matter what shape it's in. It's funny, the Oval at Indy and Cup cars is like racing on a road course, so now we'll be racing on the road course." Now, and we've talked about that. You know, back when it was the Brickyard in regular times, it was in a time of the year where we went to a bunch of different tracks. Pocono was there, Michigan, I think, was there, Indianapolis, sure. Watkins Glen.
Yep.
All of them were kind of tricky in and of their own, and so we had talked about the fact that they were all kind of road course-like, but Daniel Suarez comes out and says it exactly. Mm-hmm. Kevin Harvick goes this, though. "I can't imagine driving backward on the front stretch and driving the road course in the infield. It's an oval thing for me."
Mm.
Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin pretty much both feeling pretty much the exact same way from what we can tell. Mm-hmm. They're not fans of this at all. Harvick's Stewart-Haas Racing teammate Eric Almirola said, "If I'm being honest, I'm sad about it. I think the racing on the Oval was so cool. It was a special place, and to race on the Oval was just that special." Kyle Busch putting his 2 cents in, quote, "For my opinion and my perception, I don't view it as Indy. No, Indy is the Oval." And then there's a guy who, as we talked about earlier on in this show, is A.J. Allmendinger. He's one of the better road course racers in NASCAR. He was a little bit kinder. He said, quote, "There are certain places where if you just say the name of the track, the fan knows where the place is. That's what Indianapolis means to me. I don't have an opinion about whether it would be bigger to win on the Oval or the road course, because a win at Indy is a win at Indy. When you win there, you still get to kiss the bricks." Yep. I wonder about that. Because, again, the history of it is the Indy 500. Mm-hmm. And it was Dale Jarrett who started the whole kiss the bricks sort of thing. Helio Castroneves was the guy that started the climb the fence routine. But it was Dale Jarrett that started the kiss the bricks routine. So that, while it has translated over in Indycar, was a NASCAR move to begin with. Mm-hmm. But it was a NASCAR move to win on the very same track that for 100 years, give or take, by that time, mm-hmm. had been made so famous by the Indy 500 running on the rectangle. That was the big attraction, was to bring NASCAR's stock cars to the rectangle for Jeff Gordon and for Dale Earnhardt and for Dale Jarrett and all these other drivers who have won and all the other drivers who have had the chance to at least go there and experience it,
right?
Knowing that they're on hallowed ground. that's what Indianapolis is to the racing world. That's one of the hallowed grounds. There are facilities in every single sport that everyone dreams of going to. In football, it's Lambeau Field. In baseball, it used to be Yankee Stadium before they tore it down and built the new one. Now it's Wrigley Field or Fenway Park. For racing, Indianapolis is either at the top of the list or in your top 5 of facilities that you want to go to, regardless of where in the world you are.
Right. Absolutely. For me, definitely in the United States, it's definitely Indianapolis. I've been fortunate enough to be on the grounds at Daytona. Darlington, I look at as hallowed ground. Talladega will always be hallowed ground to me.
Right.
Charlotte is hallowed ground. So, bucket list tracks, I've been fortunate enough to check off quite a few of them these past few years. Indianapolis is definitely next, but if you're looking on a worldwide stage, I'm going to have to say Monaco is just as big as Indy.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Yep.
But at the same point in time, Indianapolis is up there. And again, it
no
doesn't
doubt.
matter really where in the world you are, or, truth be told, what series you are a particular fan of.
Yep.
Indianapolis holds a special place in a race fan's heart because of their history.
No doubt.
And I've said this on the air before. I've had the chance, and it's been a long time. It was back in 1996 when me and a buddy of mine came over to Indianapolis for the Mopar Nationals, and that was held down at what we now call Lucas Oil Raceway Park. Back then it was Indianapolis Raceway Park. But we stayed at the old Speedway Motel, and that Speedway Motel was literally right under the Turn 2 grandstands at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And when we got there and we got checked in and everything, we had the chance to kind of roam around, and an outside gate was left open. So we went through it, and we were able to climb up on a hill. Inside gates were closed, but we were able to go up on the top of that hill and look through that fence, and we're able to see down the back stretch of the track that I'm going to today. And it's weird to think that I won't see them running on that full track. I'll see them on the road course.
Yeah.
And with the friends that are coming with us that helped us get these tickets, we had to plan out Sunday, because today's tickets are kind of general admission. We can sit pretty much anywhere we want. Tomorrow's tickets are reserved seating.
Right.
So we had to pick where we wanted them to be, where we wanted our seats to be. And I had to think about it. I was thinking, okay, this is the road course. We're going to here. We want to see what's going on at the finish line. So I, made that choice based upon that. And I wouldn't have made a much different choice, truth be told, but I had to take the oval into consideration.
Right.
And it's going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy being at Indianapolis, but at the same point in time, it seems so weird that we're not seeing them on the oval.
Yep. I can see where you're coming from with that, no doubt.
Yeah, it'll be part of CRN story time next week. One other note in the Cup Series, then we'll take a break and go into the Xfinity Series. Another track changing things up this year is Texas Motor Speedway. They got the chance to host the All-Star race earlier this year. They'll get another chance at it next year. For this year, Texas gave up a points race to Circuit of the Americas, and in return, they got that All-Star race. NASCAR officials said that the All-Star race will run at Texas again in 2022. Thing is, this was revealed, but we still don't have the official schedule yet. What this also tells me, though, is that we're probably, this is unconfirmed, but we're probably going to get another Cup Series race at Circuit of the Americas for 2022.
Yeah, all but, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, let's take that break. We've still got Xfinity Series, Camping World Truck Series, and who knows what else trouble-wise we can get ourselves into in the final segment of the show. Comes up right after this on CRN.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network.
Do you hear My Computer Career ads and think,
Track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
As we said, going to break, we're coming back with the Xfinity Series, with them being in Indianapolis as well this weekend on the doubleheader today with the NTT Indycar Series. I'd stated earlier in the show that we had a little bit of breaking news with a driver change happening today for the Xfinity Series. Well, he was out a couple of weeks ago. He's out again. Michael Annett will not be piloting the number one pilot, Flying J Chevrolet today. His replacement, just some guy named Chase Elliott.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, that's all. Yep. He's already being fitted into the all-state. It's not the pilot Flying J car.
Let's look at it this way. Back when we were still dealing with Kyle Busch and his 5 races in the Xfinity Series,
yeah,
and how we always said we'd pencil him in as the winner,
yeah,
and then ink him in later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chase Elliott, let's go ahead and pencil him in.
Yeah, I'm
pretty comfortable with that.
Yeah, there's images on Twitter right now from a bunch of the media people in the infield of where he's getting fitted into that all-state Peterbilt Chevrolet today, not the pilot Flying J car.
I got you.
Yep.
All right. Back when NASCAR only ran 2 road courses a year in the Cup Series, before the Cup Series drivers took it seriously, and again, thinking like a decade or 15 or so years ago, we had what we called, and we kind of still do call them road course ringers. We just don't see them as much. They would very rarely win, but they always seem to perform well for their teams in their one-off appearances, and one of those guys was Max Papis. Papis, while keeping busy in the world of motorsports, has not been in a NASCAR ride in 8 seasons. That was supposed to change this weekend. He's been tabbed by Rick Ware Racing to drive the number 17 car later today in a cooperative effort with SS Greenlight Racing. But then Papis was informed that he had tested positive for COVID-19. So Papis said on social media Thursday morning he had woke up that morning with a bit of a runny nose and a headache, prompted him to get tested. It came back positive. And this is despite he had been vaccinated. So that's that Delta variant coming back into form as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in his place, they've chosen J.J. Yaley. Does that move the needle for you any?
Yeah, backwards.
Backwards, yeah, because I think, no disrespect to J.J. Yaley, who has been a veteran in NASCAR for, 20 years now?
If not more.
Max Papis is an upgrade.
Absolutely, especially with a road course.
Then we get this bit of news.
Yeah.
JD Motorsports with Gary Keller has decided that road course ringers should be all the rage. So in their 3 cars today are all road course ringers. In the 0 Chevy Camaro, Spencer Pumpelly, who has 2 road course races to his credit this season alone. Piloting the number 6 entry will be Ryan Eversley. Eversley has only 1 Camping World Truck Series start to his credit, but a wealth of experience in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge Series, so let's just say that road course racing is what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, is a guy by the name of Mike Skeen, S-K-E-E-N. He climbs into the number 15 later today. He's also an IMSA veteran with only 1 NASCAR start. That was back in 2018 when he was at Watkins Glen. Now, that day he finished 28th, but don't take that to be how good he is. That was due to mechanical issues. At about the midway point of the race, before those mechanical issues hit, he was in the top 15.
Mm-hmm. He was.
JD Motorsports with Gary Keller, what kind of a car do you think that they can put on the track for these road course ringers, and can they do well enough in those cars to actually be any form of competitive?
Well, after watching the practice round yesterday afternoon, I will say this in full confidence: 2 out of the 3 of those cars are in danger of missing the race. And that being the 15 of Skeen and the 6 of Eversley, because they were respectively 40th and 41st on the speed chart yesterday. And with them being qualifying today, out of a 44-car entry list, only 36 will make the race. So 8 cars are going home, and I'm going to say that 6 and the 15 are in grave danger if they don't pick the pace up.
I gotcha. Okay. Then we do one bit of news from the Camping World Truck Series following last week's race at Watkins Glen. Race officials determined that a Kyle Busch Motorsports truck, the number 18, the one driven by Chandler Smith, failed the height requirement. So they eliminated his 18th place finish, crediting with last, 40th. The disqualification, by the way, does not change his playoff eligibility. He had made it in on points anyway, and he will remain in the playoffs despite that. I'd heard a couple of people say that this maybe should have been not only a disqualification for the race, but a disqualification for the playoffs, and that Grant Enfinger should have gotten in. But again, we're in Alabama. He was a Mobile, Alabama-based driver. I think that's a little bit of homerism, truth be told. Because, I mean, it's not just one race that gets you into the playoffs. It is a season's worth of work.
Right.
Do you agree, or do you think that because of this disqualification, he should have also been disqualified from the playoffs?
That because you have an issue, and excuse me, you have an issue with a shock, which it was clearly stated because I listened to that race, and they were. I couldn't tell you how many times they went down to pit road with I think it was Kim Kuhn that had that section for MRN, talking about they were having shock issues, and the shock was, I think the way they described it and what I could read out of it, the shock was compressing but not rebounding, and it was keeping the front end bound down, and the shocks weren't, like I said, they weren't working right, so it was hung up. So naturally, that's going to cause your ride heights to be thrown off. But with one mechanical issue in one race should not distinguish or disqualify you from making the playoffs, like you said, from a season's body of work. And then plus, Grant wouldn't have been able to make it in anyway because Grant has not attempted all of the events.
Yeah, wasn't eligible anyway.
Right.
So critics wanting Grant Enfinger in over Chandler Smith, hush.
Absolutely.
Put it simply and bluntly.
Absolutely.
One final note, and this is basic NASCAR because this covers all three top series. NASCAR officials have released the dates of the postseason award ceremonies. And I say dates. Thing is the Cup, Xfinity, and Camping World Truck Series are all going to be honored in Nashville during Champions Week. This will start officially November the 30th, go through December the 2nd. The official Cup Series award ceremony will be December 2nd. They haven't said specifically whether they're going to try and combine it, which would make for a really long day doing awards, or whether they're going to do, as they have in the past, Xfinity and Truck on one day and then the Cup Series on its own day, which I think is probably the way that they're going to go, but they haven't confirmed that yet. But yeah, so Nashville, again, hosting November 30th through December the 2nd.
Yeah, and then the crazy thing about that is it's on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, so expect certainly the Cup Series, and maybe, depending on how generous the NBC Sports Network decides to be, well, I take that back. It'd have to be Fox, because Fox has all the Camping World Truck Series stuff. Would they be willing to split that, do you think?
Good question on that one.
I mean, we might finally be able to get televised coverage of the Camping World Truck Series and Xfinity Series playoffs. I guess we'll see.
True.
Time will tell. In the meantime, that wraps up the news here for the day. And for those of you that are traveling or would travel up north, we mentioned this at the beginning of the show. Gas gets more expensive. You get into Kentucky, it's up by about $3 a gallon. Hey, welcome to Indiana, where it's like $3.20 a gallon.
That gives me flashbacks of Ohio because I thought I saw as high as, I think it was $3.49 just north of Columbus on 71.
Yeah.
And that was July. That was in July.
I don't doubt it at all. But yeah, we're less than 100 miles away from the city of Indianapolis. We're going to meet up with some friends of ours, and I'll get to go over. And I think Karen's going to stick with our friend and not join me necessarily at the track today. I'll get to take in Indycar and Xfinity, and then tomorrow we'll all do the Cup Series and all that.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a twofold present, my wife has said, and she wants to make this very, very clear. This is a twofold present. Number one, it's my birthday, which technically was last Monday.
Right.
And number two, this is a gift from our friends from having gone through rehab and getting over the whole triple bypass thing.
Right.
So that was my incentive to get up here. So yeah, it's let's just say it's For me, anyway. We'll find out whether Karen agrees after the weekend or not.
Right.
But for me, it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, as the never-ending saga continues, we have another driver change for the Xfinity race today.
Oh, my gosh. Yet another one.
Yeah, yet another one. James Davidson will be stepping into the number 5 B.J. McLeod Motorsports car, subbing for Kyle Tilley today. The reason Kyle Tilley is out, he's got a sore shoulder.
Wow.
Reading it straight from the J-Ski release that just hit. James Davidson will replace Kyle Tilley in the number 5 B.J. McLeod Motorsports car today for the Pennzoil 150 NASCAR Xfinity Series race. Tilley, who has a sore shoulder, will focus solely on his cup duties for Live Fast Motorsports, which includes a 50-minute practice this morning. This will be Davidson's first Xfinity Series race since 2018, where he drove for JGR. The number 5 car must qualify into the show and was 43rd quickest on the scoring pylon on Friday.
Ouch.
Yeah. Pick the pace up.
Good luck.
Yeah. Good luck with that for sure. Good luck, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. So it ought to be interesting to see how all that turns out.
Yep.
Can't tell the players without a scorecard. If I got a program today, I'd have to start scratching out names like I would be during the Major League Baseball All-Star game.
Yeah.
The changeover is constant when it comes to this, obviously.
That is an accurate assessment there, sir.
Yeah,
accurate.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, I'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure, next week when we're all back in studio for the show next week. And I'm going to leave it to you and John and let you guys take it home the rest of the way. I thank you guys for putting up with me being on the phone for the past 2 hours. Karen says goodbye. And,
see you, Karen.
You guys all have a safe week. And, again, we'll all be back in studio next week, okay?
All right, we definitely do so. And you enjoy your time at the beloved Brickyard today, not seeing only 1 but 2 races, and then taking in that Cup race tomorrow. So,
yeah, he gets to go see 3 races. Meanwhile, we're stuck in this humidity.
It's not going to be cool up there for sure.
One of these days, we'll all be able to do this together.
Yeah, no joke. It's been too long. Too long for sure.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Man. We'll talk again real soon.
All right, brother. Be safe. See ya. Another one in the books. Seemed like it took forever for me, but it's another one in the books.
I'm just going to say I'm glad it's over for today.
I could say that's a fair assessment.
You know, we need to set up a camera for like behind the scenes, and yeah. You can see all the frustration and struggle I go through every Saturday morning setting all this stuff up.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair statement.
We'd have to kill the sound because of all the less than good words, shall we say?
That's pretty fair to say.
When I get frustrated, it just spills out. What can I say?
Yeah, the frustration doesn't go DEFCON. It doesn't go DEFCON. It doesn't go nuclear. It goes full-blown atomic.
Yep, pretty much.
Full-blown atomic. But
anyway, so Steve will be back next week, which is great.
Yep.
You'll be here. I should be here. We'll all have fun then. Until then, buckle up, be safe, and we'll catch you next week. See ya from the Championship Racing Network.
See you.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
WTD.